Garden of the Gods, the rocks from the gods, are much more than just rocks. They have a history that is indescribably breathtaking. It is much more than someone just finding rocks. It is about someone who bought land and saw these beauties and knew that he needed to share them with the world. I moved out to Colorado in 1879. I moved out here because my dear friend, General William Jackson Palmer, and his wife, Queen Palmer, told me that buying a summer home here would be just grand. I, Charles Eliot Perkins, was very hesitant on moving out here, but since my friend, General Palmer, told me that I could just build a summer home out here and not have to be out here 24/7, I agreed. So I moved out here with the initial thought of buying a plot of land and building a summer home here. Instead, I ended up buying 480 acres of land for $10,473. This land was full of red rocks and gorgeous scenery. It had a tree called a one-seed juniper that grew on or near the rocks. This is one of the only trees that is known to do so. There is also an abundance of wildlife such as birds, snakes, lizards, etc. There is also a bird called the white-throated sparrow that lives near here along with ravens, chipmunks, small rodents like that. These rocks were so glorious that no human hand could have crafted them. These rocks were created over time. They were in the desert, underwater, and the erosion from the wind shaped them into these formations they are, although before this time there was human occupancy. There was evidence of tools, bifacial stone scrapers, chirp flakes, tools that the native Indians used. There was life found in these rocks in 1300 BC. The Ute Indians lived here. They were hunter-gatherers, and they settled around this rocky area for some time before moving on to their new hunting ground. After I bought those 480 acres of land, I made them free to the public, although that was not made legal for some years later after my death. This brings us to 1907. I lay on my deathbed. I hope and pray that my kids will make my land officially free to the public. I call them into my room. I tell them to make my land free to the public so the city won't harass them. To my great enjoyment, 2 years after I had passed, in December 22nd, 1909, my kids had the land legally handed over to the city. From then on, people enjoyed climbing, hiking, and even just viewing this area. Some people would create certain routes that would become climbing and hiking trails for the future. Garden of the Gods has its many trails, but did you know that it was almost named the Beer Garden? Two men, Mr. Cable and Mr. Beach, were riding through the garden when Mr. Beach exclaimed that this spot would be perfect for drinking beer. Mr. Beach said that they should call this place the Beer Garden. Mr. Cable did not like the name. He thought that this place was too beautiful for such a name. Mr. Cable said that this place was so beautiful and heavenly that only the gods could have been capable of creating it. So then he came up with the name, the Garden of the Gods. The first stake was driven into Garden of the Gods by a man named Jewett, an original member of the Colorado City Town Company. It was driven in the gateway of the Garden of the Gods area. Although these are only some of the interesting things that make the garden so enjoyable, these are the founding facts of the all-amazing Garden of the Gods.